It's a great pleasure to follow the Noble Lady Baroness Blower and to agree with everything she said. This has been a rich and full debate reflecting the importance of this set of amendments. And what I'm going to do is join the breadth of support for Amendment 168 to add another party to the list, and just to make some contributions that are different and at point disagreement with some of the discussion we've had. And picking up on the point of the Noble Lady Baroness Blower, I think, whilst I entirely agree with Amendment 171F, I do think we have somewhat been rather driven off course. When we think about this being about commercial confidentiality, we're talking about commercial companies primarily here, I think, that are going to be citing commercial confidentiality. And I cross-reference a question asked by the Noble Lady Baroness Kidron in the DCMS oral question earlier today, who was expressing concern about giant multinational media companies providing materials on media literacy to schools. Now, that's something that might be a cause for concern. I also have great concern about very large multinational companies selling curriculum materials all around the world, which may or may not be appropriate to the British context. And again, that's where I would say we're much more likely to encounter that argument of commercial confidentiality. Yeah. I would indeed ask a question whether any commercial company should be providing materials going into our schools. I would fully accept that NGOs, social enterprises, people who start out with a social purpose to produce materials for our schools, that is a very valuable and worthwhile thing in specialist areas. But if you have a company whose entire purpose is to make money, that's what a commercial company is, what is that going to do to the materials that they produce? Now, I'm also going to...
I just to note that a lot of the charitable organisations and so on are making money. I mean, I'm not suggesting that because they're making money they're evil, but I don't think that quite works in this instance, because the phrase commercial sensitivity is used by organisations that are not big businesses going in. They are actually small, socially worthy, but they are also commercial. And they are, a lot of them, making quite a lot of money, let me tell you. Even if they're doing it for the best intentions, that's not really the point.
And while we're at it, and I should declare in my interest that I work with a company called Everfi that do some of this work, but they liaise with money-making commercial organisations in order to provide resources at no charge for teachers. And so, some of those, for example, relate to careers, which is part of this group of amendments, where you have got excellent science employers, for example, or computer gaming companies, and they're trying to help create the learning that will then mean that people are more inclined and readier and more confident from all sorts of backgrounds to think that they could work in those industries. And I wouldn't want anything that she's saying to curtail that sort of important learning resource.
I take the point from the Noble Lady in terms of that NGOs and social enterprises may indeed have commercial interests. I still think that there is a difference between they're using that to fund their work, which is different to a company that exists purely for making profit. I do think there is a difference between the two groups, but I take the point about commercial confidentiality. And indeed, the question about computer gaming companies is something I'll come back to circulating when I comment on some of the other amendments. Amendment 91 and indeed the related 171I, both about careers programs and work experience. I entirely support these amendments, but I do think we've already had an interesting debate and some bit more needs to be drawn out about this. Is some of the discussion around this, and the Noble Lord Shipley said this in introducing it, talking about raising aspiration and social mobility. Well, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that there's a huge amount of aspiration in our societies that people are not able to fulfil because they lack opportunities. And I think we need to acknowledge all of those strangled aspirations. And I pick up the point from the Right Reverend Prelate Bishop of Durham, and indeed the Noble Lord Cormac, that we need to think about this not just as a way of helping people to think about different careers, although I very much agree with the Noble Lady Baroness Gardner of Frognall that addressing gender stereotypes is really important here. but actually going out into society and having some time spent in operations in society is a way for people to see how they might contribute in all sorts of ways, not just through whatever paid employment they might eventually take up. And I think it's important we see that. But this whole language of aspiration and social mobility, I would contend that we have to ensure that we value everyone contributing to our society in all sorts of ways. I'll pick up the Noble Lord Grocock's point about Eton. Wouldn't we have got somewhere when people at Eton are aspiring to be a school dinner person or aspiring to be a bus driver? Maybe there are pupils at Eton doing that, but I kind of doubt it somehow, and I somewhat doubt they're encouraged to do it. Yet, of course, those are both vital jobs in our society, which people can make a large contribution through. In terms of Amendment 168, I entirely support it, and I think it's very, very powerfully, the importance of it has been very powerfully covered by lots of people, particularly the Noble Lord Harries of Pendergarth. I would, however, perhaps question one word in it. This is referring to British values as values of British citizenship. When I look at all of these values down here, democracy, rule of law, freedom, equal respect, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, I would say that those are the views that the international community has collectively agreed should be the views of human rights and the rule of law which should be observed all around the world. And I don't think this necessarily has to be referred to as British citizenship. These are the values of citizenship which we encourage in our own society and we encourage all around the world. And indeed it is British jurists, British campaigners who've played a very powerful role, indeed British governments, as in the European Court of Human Rights, for example, who've played a big role in spreading those values around the world. So they're not uniquely British values, they're values we want to encourage everywhere. And on that point, I do have to challenge a comment made by the Noble Lord Hodgson of Ashley Abbots, who suggested that those who have been born overseas and have chosen to become British citizens may have less awareness of these values than those who were born here. Of course, people who've chosen to move here, and I declare my own interest here as someone who chose to become a British citizen, they've actually consciously chosen to sign up to those values. And I think it's very important we don't suggest that this is an issue for some people and not everyone in our society. I had a lot more, but I'm very aware of the time, and we haven't yet heard from the noble ladies on the front bench about the mandatory curriculum subjects. But I will just come back round to the point about computer gaming, because some of the items they suggest are crucial are financial literacy and life skills. Now, I look to a report from the Centre for Social Justice on the money, a roadmap for lifelong financial learning, which points out the fact that there's a huge problem with a lack of financial knowledge among young children being exposed in digital online marketplaces, including particularly gaming, loot boxes. So I think we need to be very careful about the involvement of companies like that, because there are very large kind of financial interests there. And I will just finally, because I'm very aware of the time, and I did have a lot more, but I do just want to say the one thing that I don't agree with, I have to put this on the record, is all academies must follow the national curriculum. The Green Party doesn't believe there should be a national curriculum. We think there should be a set of learning entitlements that learners and teachers together develop a curriculum content to suit their needs and interests.